Ahoy comic conventioneers, it's Stingray welcoming you once again back to the Art Cove, and today we're going to be doing one of my favorite things, exploring the indie depth. Now, last weekend, I went to Jacksonville, Florida to attend the first ever FC3/IC3. And you might be a little bit confused by all those letters and numbers, but don't worry, I'm going to help you get through it. First of all, FC3 is First Coast Comic Con. This is the third year of First Coast Comic Con, and it is, as far as I know, the premier comic book convention in Jacksonville, Florida. It is an annual show put on by Michael Traylor and Denny Corson. Yeah, 3 years running now, so that's a good start. And at IC3, you guys should be familiar with if you've been watching the channel for any amount of time, is the Indie Creators Comic Con. Now, in the past, IC3 was a once-a-year show in New Haven, Connecticut. This year, the main IC3 show is going to be in Providence, Rhode Island in September. But the people at CAF, who are now the owners and operators of IC3, are trying to take it national. So IC3 at FC3 in Jacksonville was the first attempt to start bringing IC3 to other places. And they did it by finding a local homegrown comic show, FC3, and basically joining forces. And it was really cool because I don't know where the venue was for FC3 in the previous couple of years, but this year they moved into the brand new Duval Hall at the Jacksonville Fairgrounds. 40,000 square feet of space that was dedicated entirely to comics. The venue was really cool, very large, spacious. And it's interesting because right now it's kind of like out in an area by itself, but there's a lot of construction in the areas around there. They're really trying to build that up. And it's going to be interesting to see by this time next year how much other stuff is going to be out there. But anyway, the point being, FC3 was strictly a comic book show, and IC3 is a comic show, but it's more about the indie creators. It's getting people out there to the shows to show off indie comics and get those into the hands of collectors. So the way that they decided to present this kind of dual show, this co-sponsored comic book convention, was when you walk into the show floor, on the right side, it's all traditional comic book show. Long boxes full of back issues, slabs up on the walls, key issues on racks with price tags on them and that kind of thing. To your left, as you come into the show, it's all creators. Now, they had some more well-known creators there. Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner were there. Greg Land was there. I think there was a couple of other names that you guys would probably recognize. But then they also had over 100 indie comics creators. And there was so many great indie comics there, so many cool creators. There was just a lot going on. And I thought it was a really fun show. It was a one-day show, Saturday only. $20 for a ticket, gets you access to both halves, the whole shebang. It was a good time. And the really cool thing is that the show was just on Saturday, but there were other things going on too. I know I wasn't in town for it on Thursday, but Thursday evening, Jacksonville has their own minor league baseball team, the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, and they did an event at the game. I believe that you could get prizes if you showed up in cosplay. I'm not sure, I don't remember what else was going on for that, but I thought that was a really cool way to just kind of like make it a really local show, make it a part of the community. But then on Friday night at 8 p.m. at the Kickbacks Gastropub, which is this really cool, like steampunk themed gastropub, we had a drink and draw. Most of the artists from the show showed up, sat down. They had sketch cards and 5x5 square, more like coaster type little pieces of board, like you would see at a more traditional drink and draw. And people just sat down and started drawing. It was a really fun time. Matt Sardo was there because he's the guy behind IC3, and he was yelling out prompts for the artists to take. It was really fun. One of the prompts was crying Iron Man. So it was a lot of Iron Man faces with tears coming out of the eye holes. One of them was Muppets, but not Kermit. If you know, you know. And then the one was really fun. I had stepped away for a few minutes and I came back and I looked at the table and there's all these like coasters and sketch cards of a woman eating a hot dog. And then I realized it was The Pro. And so the prompt was The Pro eating a hot dog. If you know who The Pro is, it's a character that was created by Garth Ennis and Amanda Conner. If you know, you know. It's kind of a throwback, deep cut. And I looked around and saw all these pictures of this woman eating this hot dog. And I'm like, whose prompt was that? And while was gone, while I was out, Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor came in, and Amanda told everybody, draw the pro eating a hot dog. That was a cool moment. I got to spend some time at the drink and draw. I was sitting in a booth with two guys who were tabling at their very first convention. They'd attended conventions as guests before, sure, but they were exhibiting, they were having a table at a con for the very first time, and I thought that was really cool. And we'll talk a little bit more about those guys in a minute. But yeah, so the drink and draw was a lot of fun. I mean, Dean Haspiel was there, Eli Schwab from Cosmic Lion, Jamie Jones, Matt Sardo, Kazra was there, Jimmy and Amanda were there. I don't think they did any drawing though. There was a couple of dozen people there at least. I know that the artist bullpen crew, Kayla, Valerio, and Keith Browning, I think they were there early on, but I think they left pretty early too. I know that Morgan Heron was there from the Cosmic Lion crew, a few other folks. It was a lot of fun. The food at that place was really good. They had some great drinks. I had a mixed drink called a Never Ending Story, and it was pretty all right. But then Saturday was the main event, the big time, right? So Saturday morning, I got over to the show, and I wasn't sure where to start because, like I said, you walk in and it's split down the middle. Like, do I want to go look at comics or do I want to go meet indie people? And obviously, you know, being me, I went to visit the indie people. I decided to go talk to them. And I came away with a pretty decent pile of books. So we're just going to dive right into it. Now, one of the folks that I got to meet at the show, we'd met before, actually. I met at OAX this year, was Dan Goodwin. If you guys aren't familiar with Dan, he is a CAFer. He is a regular in the chats on the Comic Art Fans YouTube channel. He's appeared on the channel a couple of times. He was at OAX this year. He wasn't tabling there because this was his first ever con that he's tabled at. So he was one of those folks that I mentioned from the drink and draw. And Dan was there. He had a ton of pre-done sketch cards. He was taking commissions, 9x12s and sketch cards. He had a bunch of OA from he had two new comics that dropped at the show, Warp Dragons and Teleporter. And he had OA from his comics. And here's the other really cool thing. Dan did the show poster for IC3 at JAX, okay? And this is it right here. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this on this one, but this is actually signed by a bunch of the folks that were guests at the show. And Dan did all of the indie characters from these guests that were attending the show. So up here we have Street Angel by Jim Rugg, Kankor by Matt Allison. You have Steel Streets by Monty Keene, Captain Red, which is Dan's creation from his own comic. You've got Wizard Cowboy by Jamie Jones. You've got Half of the Crown by Ro Higashi, Cosmic Cat by Rick Lopez. And I think that's everybody. Yeah. Chest Face, the big guy in the middle by Dean Haspiel. Yeah. So this is a really badass poster. Dan really knocked this out. I heard several of the folks who have characters represented on this poster go over and tell Dan how awesome they thought that this was. And it's really super cool. And there were a few copies of this poster that got signed by all of the creators who are represented on here. And there's even a signature from this schlub up here, the showrunner, some guy named Kazra, you know? I don't know. That probably brought the value of this thing down a little bit, but, you know. But yeah, so Dan did that poster, and it was super cool. He had the original art of the poster at the show. It was for sale. And it was cool because, you know, there's just the image, and he had a separate page which had the logo and the lettering on it, which Dan did by hand. How cool is that? And I will say, seeing his original art was super cool because his comics work, he does all hand lettering. And it's crazy because Dan, for a long time, for many, many years, was a digital artist. And then as he got more and more into the art collecting community and seeing the attention paid to traditional art and how much people want traditional art, Dan decided to go traditional again. And so he put out 2 new books that he drew traditionally, and he did this poster, and he brought a ton of OA with him at the show. And it was so cool to see. And I love Dan's lettering. It's fantastic. And I didn't pick up any comics from Dan this time around, but I did pick up this badass little Ultron sketch card that he did. It was one of the pre-done ones that he brought to the show and was in his book with a ton of others. There were several others that I really liked, but this Ultron just really spoke to me for some reason. I love the insane level of detail that he put into this. I love how it looks like Ultron kind of pulled himself together out of a junk heap. And I love the lighting effects. It's got that classic glowy eyes and mouth with the teeming energy coming out of it that you just kind of associate with Ultron, right? Ultimate badass robot. There was a Mysterio one that was really badass, but Dan was keeping that one because he liked how well it came out. There was a Spider-Man Noir one, which I kind of liked a lot, but I landed on the Ultron as being the one I wanted to get. Now, Dan was one of the two guys that was tabling for the first time, and his table was directly facing the other guy, one Brendan Paul, who does the book, The Adventures of Chuck Maxwell. This book, I haven't read it yet. I'm going to be honest. I haven't gotten through this stack, but I'm very much looking forward to reading this one. So this is the first issue of Brandon's first comic. It was his first time tabling at a show. It was even his first time participating at a drink and draw. And it was cool because I got to sit there and watch him draw a Hellboy on a 5x5 coaster. And he did another one. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, the Hellboy one was really sick. This book, man, this guy, this is his first comic, but the art is so good. It's so detailed. It looks like he's been doing this for a long time. I mean, look at this. I mean, look at that. It's got a Nick Pitarra and a Frank Quitely kind of vibe going on there. I assume that those are influences. I don't really know. Yeah, this book looks super cool. I love the cover. And man, Brandon had some original art there for this one. And he also had some from issue 2, which isn't out yet. He wanted to get it out for the show, but didn't quite make it. But that's okay because that gives us something to look forward to. So I'm really looking forward to reading that one because seeing the OA and meeting Brandon was a really great time. It looks awesome. These next two, so there's a gentleman named Tony Ayupi. I kind of talked to him a little bit over the internet. We got to know each other a little. He is kind of very much a part of the comics community down there in JAX. He works on a show down there in that area called DCAS. Very, very much trying to bring comics to the people and just help creators get exposure and all of that good stuff. Great guy. And I finally got to meet him at JAX, and cool guy. We had a great time chit-chatting and meeting up and all that. And he had a whole slew of books at his table. And I said, all right, well, tell me about all of them. And he told me what he had. And the book that I landed on was this one called The Aquabarian. It's basically barbarian action, sword and sandal kind of thing, but underwater in this really, like, look at these back covers, really kind of dark underwater world. The art is really crazy looking, really sick. And you know, I'm a fan of wet guys, so this seemed kind of up my alley and I decided to check that one out. Let's see, next up, Jared Cullum. Jared Cullum is really awesome. He's working on the Kaito 84, which is the new Usagi Yojimbo book, the first one ever to not be worked on by Stan Sakai. He also has this book, Cody, that he put out not too long ago. This is more of like an all readers kind of book. I know that Matt Sardo has read this one to his kids. My buddy Carl from Carl's Collection, I believe, has also shared this one with his kids. I think they both own a page from Cody. I keep hearing about it. It's supposed to be just a really great, fun book about a friendship between a little girl and a bear. Jared was not at the Jacksonville show, but his rep, the artist Bullpen, was, and they had these signed and remarked copies of Cody for $20. So I finally picked it up and I will finally get a chance to read this. And I'm very much looking forward to it because, as you can see, Jared just does these really beautiful watercolor pages. And I seen the original art. Like, they had a whole stack of them from, not this one, but a previous book that he had done at Jacksonville. And you could just rifle through them, and they were super cool. His art is fantastic. So I'm very much looking forward to reading Cody. Matt Allison was there. We love Matt Allison. He had copies of Cankor. He had the first issue of Sweet Sepulchre, which I actually already have. But he had this one, which I had not seen before, a Sweet Sepulchre primer called Hopped Up by Matt Allison. And it's this little kind of handmade looking book on, I don't even know what this type of paper is, but it's that neon green, you know, kind of monotone looking paper. And this is limited edition. This is number 214 out of 300. So it's something Matt Allison that I didn't already have, and I decided to pick it up because I like Matt and his work. This one is called Wandering Star. It is a small manga style book. Opens the wrong way, quote unquote. And this is by the creator of Cosmic Cat, Rick Lopez. Like, the art on this one really caught me. I like the small punches of color in there. I thought that was really cool. I mean, look at the spread. That's awesome. I like Rick's work, so I wanted to check this one out. Let's see. Oh, while I was over in the Cosmic Lion area of this show, I picked up this book, Behind the White Door. This is one of the Cosmic Lion manga books. They have a whole line of manga now that they do, which are being created by international creators. They're working with people from all over the world. I believe this one is by a gentleman from Iran, Ryu Z. This one, the cover I thought was really nice looking, and the art is really striking. It looks awesome. And this one was described to me as a psychological thriller, and that's right up my alley. So of all of the manga, I decided to try this one first, and I'm sure I'll be dipping back into the manga pool from Cosmic Lion later on. Next up, oh yeah, we have Frankie Boy Monster #5 by my good buddy Morgan Herron. This one, The Ballad of Edward Church by Jude Brown. Jude is the first ever Dan T Award winner. The Dan T Award goes to artists. You have to be a first-time tabler at an IC3 show to get the Dan T Award, and Jude was the first. And this is a cool little werewolf book that Jude put together. It looks awesome, very short one. I'm looking forward to reading this one, but Jude also had some original pages from this book, and man, they were really nice. I was very, very tempted to pick up a page. Maybe at some point in the future, we'll see. Let's see, I also stopped by Monty Keen's table and picked up this collected edition of Steel Streets, Volume 1. He's been hyping this one up on the social media a lot lately, talking about how it's not going to be available for long, and once it's gone, it's gone. So the FOMO got me, and I picked up a copy. Good job, Monty. Now, I got a couple more books here I want to talk about, but there's a whole little side conversation there. So before we get there, I didn't spend a lot of time on the comics side of the house with all the short boxes and the long boxes and the slab books and all that. That's not really, I kind of feel like I'm not as much of a comic collector anymore. I'm a comic reader, but I feel like I've kind of divorced myself from the collecting aspect of things. I don't want to get graded books. I don't want to grade the books that I have. I've kind of grown weary of having several dozen long boxes taking up literally all the space in a walk-in closet in my place. You know, I read most of my books digitally. The only time I buy physical books anymore, for the most part, is when I go to indie shows and I have to, pick up these physical copies of books in order to read them. But I like doing that because I'm supporting indie artists, right? So I don't know, that's kind of where I'm at with my comic reading. My mainstream comic reading is primarily digital. I have the Marvel app, which is cool because I can read new books that come out, although I'll be 3 months behind. But I also can read the entire back catalog of Marvel comics. I can go back and read the Silver Age stuff and see kind of how the Marvel Age got started and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, point being, I didn't feel a really huge draw to the comic side of the Jacksonville show. That's just me, but I did wander over there and look around a little bit. There was some cool stuff over there. They purposely, the guys behind FC3 purposely this year brought in a number of folks that were selling trading card stuff, like Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, that kind of thing. Just try to bring an added element to the show to get a bigger audience, cast a wider net, I guess you could say. Since I was at a comic book show I decided to go look for a comic, and I wasn't expecting to find it per se, but I did find something really nice. I found Marvel 2-in-1 number 64 featuring The Thing and Stingray. This is an issue I didn't actually have before, and the first long box I decided to dip through, or the first booth or table I decided to go to look through the long box, I found Marvel 2-in-1, and they had this issue. And I mean, it's a little dinged up, but it's not in terrible condition, and it's just a reader copy, and it was $3. So no brainer, right? And this one, I love this one because this is a George Perez cover, and George Perez did the insides with I think, is it Dan Day? Something Day. And this is the one that they created the logo for. And this is the only time I think they really ever used the logo, which is absurd because it's a fucking cool logo. But anyway, that was my one non-indie comics purchase at the show. Well, I guess this next one kind of counts too. Well, it's definitely non-indie comics. One of the highlights of this show for me, I got to hang out and talk to Jim Rugg for a bit. Jim is a super nice guy. He has been a part of the comics community for a long time now. He's been at the forefront of indie comics for a while, but he's done work for Marvel as well. He is an Eisner and Ignatz award-winning cartoonist, designer, zine maker, and illustrator. He did Hulk Grand Design at Marvel. He is the creator of the Street Angel series. He created something called the Plain Janes, October Rihanna, Super Mag, and Aphrodisiac. And he was also the co-creator and co-host of the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube with Ed Piskor. So, you know, Jim's been around the block a little bit. But this year, well, recently, I guess, he is moving into something kind of new, kind of different. And he's written a book, a prose book, a nonfiction book, right, about Weapon X by Barry Windsor Smith. This is Wolverine, Weapon X, and Exploration by Jim Rugg. And basically, he's writing about, he's doing a deep dive analysis of the Weapon X book by Barry Windsor Smith, which I think is kind of fascinating. This is a classic run that a lot of people like. It's not something I've actually read, but you know, I want to see more like analysis of comics. I want to see more intellectual approaches to comics. So I think that having a whole book that deep dives a particular run on a book by a particular artist is kind of fascinating. And like, it's got a lot of pictures in it, you know, like covering, you know, covers and individual panels and things. I mean, like, here you go. There's not that many words on these 2 pages, right? But it is primarily a text-based book with some images to kind of support the text that just really gets into like what this run on Weapon X was all about. And I'm really looking forward to reading this because Jim seems like somebody who really loves comics, and I'm curious to see what his thoughts are on the Weapon X book. And on the back cover here, it says also available. I don't know if these are actually out yet or not, but I'm gonna have to go look. There's one about Daredevil Born Again by Chris Ryall, and Doctor Strange, A Decade of Dark Magic by Stuart Moore. And they all both have that little bottom logo, the Marvel Age of Comics. So I'm really intrigued by these, and I can't wait to check this one out and maybe go check out these other ones if they're available. Oh, look, I just saw, here's the page that Carl Choi got recently. Good job, Carl. You're featured in Jim's book. Now, I picked up one other thing from Jim. So there's this thing called V-Friends. I didn't know much about V-Friends. And I know that Jamie Jones, who's a buddy of mine at this point, has an issue of V-Friends coming out in the near future. And I said, Jamie, can you explain V-Friends to me? And he went, no. Go ask Jim Rugg. And when you do, let me know, because I want to hear what he has to say. So I went and I asked Jim on Saturday. I said, I bought the Weapon X book from him. And then I said, okay, so can you explain V-Friends to me? I asked Jamie and he told me to ask you. And she's like, yeah. And he went into this very, very long, very, very well delivered explanation of it. I'm going to try to give a very condensed version of it. So there's this guy named Gary Vaynerchuk who in 2006 started a YouTube thing. I think it was a daily show that he did on YouTube, or daily videos, called The Wine Library. And from there, he turned that into like a multi-million-dollar business. And then he started like a multimedia company and he did all this other stuff. And so he's this guy that, you know, has lots of money. He's an entrepreneur, a media mogul, all this other stuff. And he's always loved comics and trading cards and things like that. And he's loved collectibles. And he's loved the idea of community that is created by these things and how it kind of brings people together and allows them to share their common love of a thing. And so through you know, a series of events, he eventually created the concept of V-Friends. Now, I didn't realize this, and I especially didn't know this when I was talking to Jim, and I kind of looked this up a little bit. There are V-Friend short cartoons that are on YouTube. Apparently there's trading cards, but now there's also comic book. And so the reason that I asked Jim Rugg about the V-Friends comics is because he's been involved with them quite heavily at this point. He told me that they reached out to him and asked him if he would get involved. And at first he wasn't sure how he felt about the whole thing because, you know, it's just some rich guy trying to move in and do comics, you know. But he went to like what was basically like a writer's retreat that they did. And he actually liked what he saw and heard while he was there. And now he has written several issues of the VeeFriends book, and he's working with them pretty heavily. And like I said, my Jamie Jones did the art for an issue that is upcoming. A lot of indie creators, it seems like, are getting involved with the comic version of VeeFriends. And each issue so far has been standalone, so it's not like a continuity thing. They're numbered, but you can kind of pick up any given issue that you see and read it and not be lost. Basically, the characters of VeeFriends are all, like, you know, anthropomorphic type animal characters, and they're these characters that are meant to portray certain traits, certain like human type traits, right? And the concept is that the book is supposed to like tell stories that help people deal with like emotional issues, and it sounds kind of crazy, but it also sounds kind of cool. And so Jim had a few of the issues that he worked on there, and there's this one here. It's issue number 13, Farm Fights. And as you can see, it's in the shiny foil bag. It's a blind bag because I don't know what cover this is. And again, this is another aspect of the comic series that I didn't know about, but apparently, according to Jim, all the issues are blind bag issues. So you never know what cover you're gonna get. But on the back here, it says featuring first appearances from, and these are some of the character names: Hype Horse, who I believe is the ring announcer; Common Sense Cow, who is the referee; Mojo Mouse, Smooth Spider, Shrewd Sheep, Lit Lamb, Legit Llama, Aspiring Alpaca, Organized Ostrich, Diamond Hands Hen, Enamored Emu, and Bullish Bull. And I think most of those last ones are wrestlers. So this is a wrestling book. The main cover is by Jim Rugg. And it even tells you on the back here, Rarity Guide. This is an edition of 10,000. Cover A is by Jim Rugg. It's 1 in 7,332 base. One of one, out of one, there's a lollipop cover. Out of 10, there's a gold, a silver, a holofoil, a cracked ice, and a shimmer version of the Jim Rugg. There are sketch covers. There's at least one by Gary Vaynerchuk, and 1 in 4 chance to get the Jim Rugg cover. And there's a 1 in 2,000 chance to get a Bill Sienkiewicz cover. So I've never done this before, but we're going to open a blind bag comic on a video on YouTube. I feel like I'm part of the comics YouTube community now, right? So let's get into this. Oh man, it's like opening a pack of cards, which I've done a lot of in my life. Oh yeah, it's got that smell. All right, let's see. Oh, I got the basic Jim Rugg cover, but that's cool. This is the one. Jim had one of these loose. Oh. Look at that in just a sec. Jim had one of these loose, and I will admit, I'm not a wrestling guy, but this cover is so much fun. This is the issue that I decided to go for. So yeah, you have the main event here is Enamored Emu versus the Organized Ostrich. I mean, this is a fun cover. Story and art by Jim Rugg. Oh wow, this is going to be a lot of fun. There you go. There's your main event. And then let's see what this is. This is VeeFriends. Don't miss the next drop. Email and text subscribers get the news first. Oh, okay, so it's got a QR code to scan, and it's just a fun piece of art. And I guess it works as like, it could be like a bookmark. Well, there you go. So that is VeeFriends in a nutshell. Thanks to Jim Rugg for explaining that to me. Thanks, Jim, for selling me a copy of the Wolverine Weapon X, an exploration book. If you guys want a copy, look for it on Amazon, because I wanted to get one of these from Jim at Heroes Con, but he sold out before I got to him. And then he sold all the copies that he had at Jacksonville as well. So if you want to check that book out, try Amazon. I think it's on there. Now, that's the show. I had a great time. I got to hang out and talk to the Cosmic Lion peeps that I know. I got to talk to Jamie. I got to talk to Jim. I got to hang out with Dan Goodwin. I got to meet and hang out with Brandon Paul. Carlos Soca, the statue maker who was at OAX, he was there. I got to hang out and talk to him a little bit. We had a really great conversation about Absolute Batman at the Drink and Draw on Friday night, Carlos and I. He really kind of helped me see it in a different perspective that it makes me want to go back and reread it, because I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of Absolute Batman. I don't think the stories are very good. I love the art, don't get me wrong. Dragotta is killing it, and they are getting some really awesome guest artists, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I had a great time hanging out. You know, I had a good time talking to the indie creators, meeting new people, getting books that, you know, I'd never heard of before, seeing some old friends. I got to go to the comic side and pick up a Stingray comic that I didn't already own. So, you know, overall, it was a great one-day show. I thought it was a lot of fun. And afterwards, they did an after party that night at a place called Hoptingers, which was like a German. We ended up having the after party. They had it was a 3-story building, and they had a 3rd-story rooftop bar, and that's where the after party was. And basically, we just hung out and drank, and I danced a little bit. You know, got to get your swerve on occasion. And you know, we just had a good time. And then at the end of the night, went home, went to sleep in my hotel, and then flew back home the next day. So, I mean, it was a quick trip, but it was worth it because I had a lot of fun at this show. And that was it. One other thing I'll bring up real quick. I got to meet a gentleman at the show who I was not familiar with, Botter Milligan, who is the host of the Short Box Comics podcast. I feel like I had heard of the Short Box podcast previously, but I'd never listened to it or watched the video version on YouTube. But Botter was over talking to Eli from Cosmic Lion at one point, and we started talking a little bit. And he was like, "Oh, are you an artist?" I was like, "No, I'm just a collector." He's like, "Oh, what do you collect?" And I got to preach to him the good word of Stingray. And you know, he seemed kind of interested because you know it's kind of an unusual thing to collect. And I asked him if he wanted to see some stuff because I had a portfolio with me, as I usually do. And I took my portfolio out and let him flip through it, and he whipped out his phone and started filming. So he was fairly impressed by what he saw and enjoyed seeing it. You know, I think he's just starting to get into art collecting. So Botter, if you see this, it was awesome meeting you. I've watched a couple episodes of the Short Box podcast now. I watched your interview with Kazra. I watched your interview with West Coast Avengers from OAX this year. And I also saw the one you did while you were at JAX where you talked to Eli Schwab from Cosmic Lion. Good stuff. I'm looking forward to watching more videos, and it was great to get to meet you and talk with you. Good job, man, on the podcast, and keep it up. And, you know, Saturday we did the show, and then we went to the after party. I had some great food. Oh, I got to try Malort. This is totally nothing to do with comics or indie comics, but Matt Sardo is a bad man, and he lived in Chicago for a time, and he thinks that means he gets to force Malort on people. And I was the unlucky recipient of a shot of Malort. And then when Kazra showed up, he heard that there was Malort and decided that more shots of Malort needed to happen. So I had a second one on Kazra. These are my friends. You know, what else can I say? Anyway, Malort sucks. Chicago, you crazy. But yeah, Jacksonville is a great show. If you are in the Jax area or anywhere near Jacksonville, if you're even just in Florida, go check out the show next year, man. It's going to be, I think it's a good show. I think it's only going to get better. I don't know what the actual numbers were. I haven't heard anything about like the attendance and all of that stuff. It was a fun show. It was good. It was very solid. And, you know, like Kazra was asking me like, "Oh, what do you think? You know, what would you do? Maybe we can do this." And they were already workshopping like at the show, at the convention on Saturday. Him and Michael and Denny were already kind of like postulating how to make things better. So I think the show is going to continue to grow. Maybe not necessarily like size wise, but I think it's going to continue to grow as just in terms of like, it's going to continue to mature. How about that? But as a first attempt at a co-produced show where you find a local show and inject the IC3 goodness into it, I thought it worked out rather well. And I look forward to seeing other shows like that they might do in the future. And then, you know, the next one is IC3 in Providence, which is the main IC3. I'm looking forward to that one as well. So hopefully I will see some of you at IC3 Providence, and, you know, we can hang out and look at indie books. That was my experience with the show. I had a great time. I would recommend checking it out if you can make it. And if not, look forward to other IC3 shows that may be coming into your area. And if there's one that ends up happening near enough to you that you can attend, I highly recommend it, because indie comics is where it's at, man. And IC3 is doing it the right way. So anyway, I'm done. That's the video. I hope you enjoyed watching it, and I will see you all in the next one.